Welcome to this short video about the 3 human hungers, and what I'm going to cover in this video is I'm going to go through 5 different things. Firstly, I'm going to explain just why this is such an important subject, especially in these times of COVID-19. Then I'm going to explain just what my credentials are for sharing this information with you. What are my qualifications to let you know about this important information. Then I'm going to describe to you just what these 3 human hungers are all about. And then I'm going to explain just how we go about feeding and looking after and attending to these 3 very important human hungers. And then finally, what I'm going to do is explore with you how you can use this information and apply it to your day-to-day living. So just why is it important to learn about these 3 human hungers? Well, you may have noticed, but there's such a plethora, there's an abundance and overabundance of training videos and helpful videos all about how to keep our immune system healthy, and there's so many exercise videos, for example, they're coming out of our ears, aren't they? So I think the first thing to say is that this is a very important part of the picture of keeping our immunity as strong as possible. And immunity is not just about our physical health, nor is it actually just about how good a diet we eat. Immunity is as dependent on our psychological, our mental and emotional well-being. There's an awful lot of research now that suggests that our state of mind, our psychological state, our attitude, our level of positivity or negativity is having an instant effect on our immune system. In fact, there's a whole branch of science that is called psychoneuroimmunology, and over the last 30 or 40 years or so, medicine has had to recognize that our state of mind and our state of being has as significant a role to play in the strength and vibrancy of our immune system and our overall health than any amount of exercise or diet. And I wanted to prepare this short video to balance out the picture a little bit and to give you the information that the last 200 years of psychology has built up around, what makes us human and what our basic human needs are. And it turns out that just like when we do exercise, there are 3 different aspects of our exercise, isn't there? There's warming up, which would be one. There's stretching, which is another, and then there's the actual exercise itself, and then there's warming down, and there's stretching again. So the 3 components of physical exercise would be warm up, stretch, and the exercise itself, the activity. Likewise, when it comes to our food and our diet, we know that we need carbohydrates, we need proteins, and we need fats. Well, do you know what? It turns out that for our psychological and our emotional well-being, we have 3 things that we have hungers for. Also, the body needs, the human being needs to have 3 types of input. But before I go on to explain what more about these 3 human hungers of recognition, stimulus and structure are all about, first of all, what are my credentials for sharing this information with you? After all, more than at any time in human history, we need to be really smart about who and what we pay attention to or indeed believe. And so that's why I thought, in this age of false news and where anyone can post a video about just anything, their opinion, how do we know what knowledge is solid and well researched and comes from genuine professional experience. So just briefly about me, I've been in clinical practice now for over 36 years as a massage therapist and as a psychotherapist. This means that what I'm talking about isn't even something I've studied or learnt about in a book or even on a training course, although I've done all that. More than that, I've taken these ideas and I've earned my bread and butter from them for 36 years. In addition to this, my work has been tested and validated by certain professional bodies, and you can actually find me on those third-party validating bodies. So let's just have a look at what they are. So my massage and my bodywork is all validated by one of the UK's most progressive massage associations, the No Hands Massage Association. Likewise, for the psychological side of my work, I am a member of the United Kingdom Council for Psychotherapists, so I'm registered with the preeminent psychotherapy organisation across the UK. And by the way, that's not an easy thing to do. And also, because my approach is transactional analysis, I am registered with the European-wide Association of Transactional Analysis, IATA, this one across there. And here in the UK, that branch of the IATA, the United Kingdom Association, is UKATA. So I can be found, I can be held accountable. What you're going to get here is gold standard psychology and understanding of what being human is about. So let us look at what these three human hungers really are. And these three human hungers are like the core drives of the human psyche, if you like. So as I said earlier, these three hungers are our need for stimulus, our hunger for stimulus, our hunger for recognition, and our hunger for structure. And so what do we mean by each of these? Well, let's take stimulus to begin with. Think just something as simple as a mobile hanging above a baby's cot, providing an interplay of light. Think of all the sounds. Think of the physical handling and the roly-poly, the rough and tumble, the throwing in the air, the movement, the chasing, the little games that go on. The stimulus of kind of entertainment. Think of how much our society rewards people who give great entertainment. We pay them the most money of anyone. If you're a top sports person or a comedian or an actress or an actor, you get rewarded by society because we know we hunger for that stimulus. But what we're going to look at now is recognition. Recognition is an almost an existential I-thou interaction. It means that someone else has recognized me, and it means I have recognized you. So what we're looking at is almost an electrical charge that can go between people. It could be as simple as a wave across the street, which is something that we're having to do a lot more of these days. But also it could be the really intimate sharing of lovers, or it could be the warmth of lifelong friends sharing a story, or just simply sharing their truth and how they are. So this recognition, our need for recognition, is vital for our health. And then if we look at structure hunger, again, if we go back to young children, what you'll see with young children is they're constantly requiring structure. You know, are we there yet? What's happening next? What are we doing before lunch? What are we going to eat at lunch? What's happening after lunch? What time are we going to bed or not? In other words, children need to have a structure, and it's as if the psyche of the human being cannot tolerate chaos. That we need to have something that soothes us and says, this is how it is. And then of course trauma often happens because that structure is disrupted by forces outside of our control, and that in itself should tell you the importance of structure. So then the really important question is, how do we meet these hungers? How do we feed them? Well, I've already mentioned that in these COVID days, one of the things that we might want to do to feed our stimulus is take up learning something like a language, or we might want to do an online training in Tai Chi or something physical, which would combine both the mental challenge of learning the positions and the physical stimulus of the movement and the air and the clothing that we're moving around. We can often find ways to increase our stimulus, but don't forget, we may also need to reduce our stimulus. I don't know about you, but I've talked to many people that have just felt overwhelmed by the endless amount of videos, rather like these actually. Only this video is saying, be careful of your diet here, because if you overwhelm yourself with stimulus, then you get stimulus fatigue. And this can have as much damage to your health and your well-being as not having enough stimulus, in fact, too much or too little, like a food, like exercise. So knowing what our comfortable amount is, and with more time on hands, some people are overstimulating themselves, and actually we might do well to just book ourselves a little bit of time in the bath with a candle and some nice music, and as it were reduce the stimulation. Certainly if we're locked in a house with kids and families and other people, and we're getting all that stimulus of being together and the dramas that can go, and that's the other aspect of stimulus. Stimulus gets fed by all the interpersonal dramas that can go on between human beings, and sometimes they can be absolutely exhausting, can't they? So having space away, reducing stimulus, might be as important as increasing stimulus. So then if we look at recognition, well, how do we get recognition at a time of social distancing? Well, first of all, what a load of old rubbish is the phrase social distancing. There isn't any need for social distancing. There is only a need for physical distancing. In fact, with Zoom and Skype and telephones and windows and street corners and places we can go and keep a physical distance, we can still socially connect and maintain the standard of the government guidelines around how much we interact. And so what I'm suggesting here is that we can make sure that we have social contact. And if you're in a busy household and you're all getting on top of each other, you might want to reduce that. But you also might want to increase it if you're socially isolated and socially isolating, and really, really look at who you can make contact with. And if you don't have people to make contact with, then you're going to have a real challenge to reach out to the local organisations, the churches, the various charities that are organising people to do precisely this, to make social contact. So there are people all around who want to connect with you so you're not isolated, because isolation is probably one of the worst things for our health and our immune system. And then when we come to structure hunger, how do we frame our days? How do we structure them? Well, for many of us, our structures were often created by external bodies, an employer, or the schedule of the kids and getting them to school and back again, and our needs for food and having to go shopping and all of those things. We still have a few of those, but many of our structures have just disappeared in these post-COVID days. So what we're looking at here is how we might create more structure for ourselves, and what could we do to structure. In other words, maybe what we need to do is to create some kind of a timetable for our day. In the lack of any external requirement for a structure, can we create the night before a structure for the following day, so that when we wake up in the morning, it's there, and that part of us that craves order and craves structure can go, so this is the day that we're planning. So it may well be in these difficult times that we need to create greater structures than we've ever had before, in order to soothe the psyche and allow the immune system to stay strong, and our well-being and our sense of being content because we're getting enough stimulus, of content because we're getting good human contact and being seen and seeing others, and we have a structure that we can settle into in our day. So now we come to the last bit of this talk, which is the audit, and how can we use this information to maintain the health of our immune system and our overall health. Here we have the three hungers, and in this column I invite you to write down how much stimulus you are getting, maybe on a daily or even a weekly basis. If you start with daily, it's kind of simpler, but you can make it bigger with going through the week. But you make an audit of pre-COVID, through pre-COVID, COVID-19, what kind of stimulus were you getting? And now post-COVID, well, I can't travel, I can't teach my massage courses certainly, and even my psychological and psychotherapy training work is having to be done at a distance. So even if we get a group of us together on Zoom, it's in a tiny little screen, which is nothing like the expansiveness of all being in the room together and so on and so forth. So the pre-COVID stimulus dropped massively, and if I give a number for this, for every activity, maybe I gave a score of 5, I would probably find that I dropped from like 80 to 30 or even 25. So massive drop in my stimulus hunger being met. And so then I have to move on to the third column and say, well, how could I up that? In order to do that, I've challenged myself to read more aggressively, to understand many of the neuroscientific theories that I haven't had time to fully put together, and indeed to write a book that I've been wanting to write for the last 10 years about neuroscience and touch and healing and trauma. So that's what I'm doing. So, and you could go through the same thing for each of these categories. What recognition was I getting pre-COVID? How much has that dropped away? What could I do to up that again? And then, as I've said in the previous bit, that the structures that were sometimes organised for us externally, we may need to create for ourselves. Listen, we're all a bit different. Some of us might really enjoy the lack of structure for a while, but be careful around that, because the human psyche needs structure, the human psyche, we need to be recognised, and we need stimulus. So what we've done in this short psychology training video is to explore the 3 fundamental human hungers, and we've spent some time where I've explained why I think this is so important. We're not just physical beings, and we're not just beings that need physical food. We are emotional and mental and indeed spiritual beings. We need the sustenance that these 3 hungers represent. I also have explained to you what my credentials are to talk about this information, and how you can verify the credence, the credential, and then I've described just what the 3 human hungers are, and then we talked about how you feed those 3 human hungers, and then with the audit I challenge you to assess the state of your 3 human hungers, and using that as a tool with which to maintain and even build your immune system. I hope this has been useful for you, and I look forward maybe to sharing some more information with you at a later date. Thank you very much for watching.